Once again, we appreciate you for staying with us on your ultimate news and current affairs program on television. TMI, lovely Monday morning. Once again, we'll say Baraka de Salah to all our Muslim brothers and sisters out there. We'll get our conversations on course right now, right away, as we look at 2023 and the legislature, particularly on impact on governance, particularly with the fact that a whole lot of issues have been at the front burner as it relates to legislation. Let's begin our conversation with the constitutional amendment. That was a very thorny issue. Until tomorrow, it's still a thorny issue because there are certain clauses, certain aspects of the Constitution that has attracted some wide reaction. Just last week or so, the Senate passed the Terrorism Prohibition Act as amended 2023, where we were told that there is now a ban on payment of ransom to kidnappers. And for those who have been through this, they see this as a direct affront on the people. But I'll leave our panelists to dissect that as we get along. Let me thank very specially, it's always very difficult to have him here, but we're glad to have the Executive Director, Foundation for Good Governance and Social Change, Comrade Austin Osakwe, here with us. Comrade, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. Good morning, viewers at home.
I also have with us in the studio a frontline civil society activist, public affairs analyst and commentator, Comrade Christopher Ojekere. Chris, thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me start with Comrade Austin Osakwe. The amendment of the Constitution is something that we've always looked forward to, but I know that this year, when all the clauses to be amended or the clauses that were amended came to the fore, it wasn't much of a jubilation. Why do you think that was the case this time around?
Well, first to posit that the desire of most Nigerians is a wholesale jettisoning of this Constitution and the entrenchment of a people's constitution through perhaps an exercise that will be all embracing, where Nigerians will have the opportunity of making inputs. The major defect of these amendments is that they are on a pick and choose basis. There's hardly any consultation, it's not participatory, and it doesn't go to the grain of addressing the pressing desires of Nigerians. All you need to do is just take a look at some of the areas where amendments have taken place. As you rightly mentioned, the latest of these absurdities, permit my language, is the attempt to legitimize the policy of government in recent times, beginning from Kaduna State, forbidding the payment of ransom. On the face value, that would be commendable. However, you can only make such a pronouncement. You can only legislate in that manner if there is a guarantee that government is living up to its constitutional responsibility to protect lives and property. The situation we have in Nigeria is that, as we speak, there are perhaps thousands of Nigerians, young and old, who are languishing in the cells of bandits and terrorists. And I use the word cell advisably. You have, the latest of it was the attack on the Abuja-bound train. Now, those people operated for hours, scattered away Nigerians. Some died in the process. They have paraded these Nigerians on video and asking for several millions of naira for the release, as ransom for the release of each of these Nigerians. Now, this has been on. Government has not been able to rescue one. We don't have reports that security agencies have identified where these bandits are holding these Nigerians. We don't have a report that anyone has been rescued. The people are left on their own. And then while that is on, you have a government asking that Nigerians shouldn't pay ransom to get their loved ones back. So, security agencies are not rescuing anybody. Government is not paying the ransom which the bandits have insisted on. We are not aware that there is any meaningful negotiation going on. Instead, what we have are daily declarations to run for office by the very same persons who ought to be addressing these issues. So I believe that if the National Assembly wants to be taken seriously, they should not place the cart before the horse. The first thing to do is to make efforts to secure the release of Nigerians wherever they are being held by bandits and terrorists. It's only when you have done that, you now say, leave the matter to us as government. Because if you pay ransom to kidnappers and bandits, you are actually encouraging them to continue in the business. We understand that. If that's the reasoning, that's fine. But we are saying, we haven't gotten there yet. It amounts to placing the cart before the horse. You are supposed to have taken certain steps guaranteeing safety of lives and property before you can have the moral standing to say Nigerians don't pay ransom.
Okay. Comrade, what are your perspectives on this latest developments related to amendment of the Constitution? Yeah.
I think they would have taken statistics of those who are paying ransom to bandits and kidnappers. And they might have found that in the rank, you have leading and top police officers leading in paying ransom to bandits.
But there's no evidence to substantiate that.
Well, we know a DPO who paid. I mean, they came out. It's not as if the DPO himself, the DPO came out and said he paid ransom. The truth of the matter is that, as our great comrade had said, you have institutions of state. One of the functions of the legislature is oversight functions over institutions of state. And the way you show a sense of responsibility and insist that institution of state function is what gives legitimacy and influence to the legislature, to the legislative arm. Now, if you have institutions of state not functioning, and you are making laws to the recipient and victims of, criminality, what kind of logic are you putting forward? You keep creating institutions of states not to function. Who has been held responsible? We're told that the house of a former president, Goodluck Jonathan, was attacked in this country. The house of a Supreme Court judge was attacked in this country. There were so many stories going on. Police were fingered in these cases. Was the IG called to question, was he made to resign? Was anybody punished? That if you begin to have such infraction at such high places, that we want to show as legislators that people's heads should roll. So the point is that it is, for me, looking like the legislative arm is just beating what you may refer to as passing through a form so as to be seen to be working. Because there is no point making laws if those laws are not meant to be enforced. They should be enforced, and then when they are not enforced, institutions responsible for why they are not implemented and enforced are brought to book. That is how you proceed. It is not to keep whipping up laws that you know that nobody is going to obey in the first place. How are you going to tell me if my wife was kidnapped or my child was kidnapped returning from school and I have the option of paying ransom so that I can have my child back, and your police is telling me forever that I should identify where the bush where the kidnappers are so that they can go after them? How would I know where the kidnappers are? You've not heard such stories? That you should identify the area where you think the kidnappers are so that you can go after them. And I have the opportunity to pay ransom. I will pay ransom. So if you are making laws, they should be realistic. You don't make laws to just pass through a form. You make laws that are realistic, that you are sure that you can enforce if they are, disobeyed. So I think it is not in good faith.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's just scale this up a little bit. We also saw a major talking point as relates to the conduct of election, particularly as relates to the mood of primaries. People have criticized the indirect mode of primaries, that it unnecessarily gives certain individuals with the clout, with the means, with the power to muzzle their way through at the detriment of other aspirants, as the case may be. That issue was very, very thorny. Do you think that bill, if it had succeeded, would have made any significant change on the process of emergence of candidates, as it were?
Well, the beauty of democracy and the intention of democracy is that power is put in the hands of the people. The recruitment process is at the heart of the success or failure of governance in Nigeria. And the recruitment process begins with primaries at the party levels. The direct primary is the one that most assures the participation of every member, every card-carrying member of the political party. What the direct primary assures and guarantees is that a few people do not decide for the majority of party members, and by implication for the majority of Nigerians, who eventually becomes the numero uno to manage the resources of the people on their behalf. So you can't fault direct primaries. However, once again, that's where the problem lies. Where the parties, and even now are the parties ready to conduct direct primaries? That is the open-ended question, and I submit that they are not. So while agreeing and conversing that direct primary is the best option for leadership selections within the party, I understand that the parties are not ready. We haven't gotten there yet. And why? I'm sure you have seen videos online of the conduct of supposed direct primaries, where some magic is introduced into numerical count. You see the counter, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 38, 39, 40, 41, 122. Yes, I have seen such videos. And in the glare of party members. That's one. Two, can the parties really say these are our members? How do you determine who the members are? Are they card-carrying members who pay dues or who do not pay dues? Do they have a database of their membership? All of these issues will militate against the effective use of direct primaries as we speak. So what the parties need to do, and look, direct primaries is an idea whose time has come. It is inevitable, it's imminent, we will get there. However, we are not there yet. What do we need to do? The political parties must now put in place a system of membership that is easy to see, easy to decipher, and then put a regime in place where members of political parties are due payers. They become financial members. And then the housing of the party cards and the party registers must be such that they are not susceptible to manipulation. So that you don't leave the register of party members in the house of one man. When primaries approach, he can decide to do whatever he wants. So you see situations. We have seen situations in this country where people as highly placed as governors, deputy governors, ministers, didn't find their names in party registers, in the parties that sponsored them into office. So if you ask me, yes, direct primaries are desirable, but not achievable as we speak.
All right, Chris, I'd like to get your take on this.
Yes, the argument for indirect primaries is that we don't want a situation where those who are political office holders, for instance, would manipulate the process and skew it to their own favors. And every time we put up an argument, I always want people to remember that what is good for one party is good for the other party. you have only one party in power at a time, but you have other parties. And the laws that should bind and apply to the party in power should also apply to the party not in power. Now, if you are putting arguments forward, you use evidence. And use practical evidence that people can see. What is the argument for those parties that are not in power in their selection processes? That because there's nobody in power in our party, we were able to prove that we allowed internal democracy to function. Right. We have parties not in power that have people in power in those parties that are more powerful than the governor that is in the party in power, that take decisions on behalf of the party. So what we should be pushing first is internal democracy, and that should cut across boards. Internal democracy within the party, whether it's what they call the small party or the big parties. If you have internal democracy within the party, and party is returned back to the hand of the party, and returned back to the for party to manage as it was in the UPN and NPN days, where, as I have said before, Adisa Okiloye got mentioned in protocol before the president. If parties are able to prove that, for instance, you don't need to canvass for a process. People will naturally flock into your party because they've been able to identify democracy within that party. They've been able to identify that within this party, internal democracy thrives. So the question is neither here nor there, because it is not laws in themselves that work. It is people who implement laws. Yeah. And if the attitude is there not to implement, but to manipulate the system and put up arguments that are popular within the particular milieu so that you can use those arguments for your own self, the argument is going to change in the next regime. So let's put sustainable systems in place that will outlive whatever situation we have. And I think that is internal democracy. Okay. That's the answer.
All right, Comrade, another major talking point as relates to the amendment of Nigeria's constitution was on the issue of the appointed or elected officials who are seeking for elective position. Take, for example, the minister, the commissioner, and stuff. And in certain cases, we've heard several cases where in some states, you have commissioners resigning in one fell swoop, perhaps to seek for elective position. But why you have that happening in some states, some ministers have kept their seat, they have kept their office, they are yet to resign, and they have indicated interest to contest for one position or the other. And we know that this was a major amendment to the Constitution. And then somewhere along the line, there was a court order of stuff, trying to kick that out. And people said, well, by virtue of that action, it's like the executive is not taking over the legislative function. I can't remember the legislature contesting that particular action.
Now again, we get to a point where we ask ourselves what the level of understanding of the reason behind particular laws being made or being amended. There's extant law. It's not new. That 30 days before you contest an election, you resign from office. You find that the confusion we are having is not at the state levels, it's at the federal level. And it's deliberate. You can't eat your cake and have it. You give something with the right and take it back with the left. What is the notoriety? What is it that those who are asking ministers and others to resign want to achieve? What do they want to prevent? Now, as a serving minister, you have clout. Your reach is long. Now, you are going for the office of senator, for instance, and you are a serving minister. There are other persons in the party who hold no positions at all in government, who are also gunning for that position. It is not different from when police arrests a suspect, and they say, we are holding him, we won't release him, so that he does not interfere with the investigating process. The fear of other politicians who are not so blessed, in quotes, to be in positions where they can affect things, is that they believe that when you say, on your marks, get set, go, and we are going that way, the minister is far ahead already while others are here. So they have some advantage over others. That's the reason behind asking them to resign. However, the question now is, are you asking for resignation before they declare intention, or resignation before they contest elections? And let me tell you, politicians want to eat their cake and have it. As we speak, governors who say they want to be president, some of them have seized the form for Senate in their senatorial districts. Those governors who have done 2 terms. In other words, they seize the Senate form as a fallback position. Because you can only have one presidential candidate. And several of them are on the field hustling, asking to be made president. They are holding the senatorial form. Ditto for those who say they want to be governor. Some are holding the... So you are going to end up having situations where one person has bought 3 different forms, employing the advantage of being in government over others. So that is the... And if you ask me what I think, the moment you decide that you want to go for a particular office, please go for it with everything. Leave this one. The decision you have made is that I am no longer interested in this one. I don't want to be minister anymore. I have paid my dues enough as minister. I now want to be president. For God's sake, the moment you declare that intention, please resign from office. It's only morally right that you do not seek to eat your cake and have it. You do not seek to use your advantage in government against others. And more importantly, sir, is that somebody said there are 3 factors that will help you win an election. He said number 1, money. Number 2, money. Number 3, money. The person who is minister in government, yes, still has access to government funds. The one who is not there may not have such access. The fear also is that this fellow has a war chest, and that war chest is serviced by his continuous presence in government. And that again raises a moral question. But I think the problem we have is Mr. President himself. His body language, and with the support of his Attorney General Malami, have tended to embolden those who serve currently with him in government to remain and stay and dare others to do their worst. So in Nigeria, you can actually make laws, and a few people will just decide that those laws won't work. They start throwing booby traps in the way. Haven't you noticed that the implementation of the law so made has become even more problematic than the law itself? That law has been interpreted in so many ways. Nigerians are gradually losing sight of what the original intendment of the law is.
The court's judgment or order that set aside and then give the pass to the Attorney General to erase that part of the Constitution. What's your take on that action?
You see, that's why when you want to solve problems like this, you deal with holistic issues. Because every time in Nigeria, I notice that the problem we have is that you want to solve a particular problem that has roots in several other problems. The problem of the court interference is the problem of the judiciary. Malami, statutorily, is the Attorney General of the Federation. The court that gave the decision statutorily is empowered by the Constitution to sit over cases and make judgments. And they have taken that process and manipulated it. And now it has, as Comrade said, become more of a problem than even the law itself. Now, does the judge have the power to order the Attorney General to expunge that clause from the Electoral Act? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. We need a lawyer to interpret that. But the point is that the speed with which Malami decided to go to Imo State to obtain that judgment and then said immediately that he was going to enforce it has thrown up a problem between the executive and the legislatures. In fact, Baja Biamila, who's a lawyer and spending his 7th time in the Senate, has said that candidates or candidates that will emerge from that process, who are elected officials who are still serving, who will emerge as candidates in their party, stand the risk of being disqualified. So you have legal issues going up and down, different lawyers having different opinions over the matter. So we've just thrown up a problem. The truth of the matter is that, as Comrade said, it's a moral question. It's a moral question to say that if you are holding a position of trust and authority and influence, and you want to compete with somebody else, that you should put yourself in a level ground where competition will be fair and equitable.
So who will enforce that?
Who will enforce that? When the number one enforcer of the federation is standing firmly on the other side. So that's the question.
Let's quickly talk about a very significant part of the constitutional amendment process, which has to do with autonomy of, I think, the judiciary, and then local government and all of that, which was something that was hailed. But the question is, it's not enough for the National Assembly to so amend. Will the states comply in terms of the requirement for such, amendments to come into effect? How do you say this, comrade?
Yes, the defect in all of these efforts at amendments is when you lose sight of the fact that there is no exercise of power without control over resources. That's the center. All of this talk about autonomy for judiciary, autonomy for local government, is who controls the resources. What is the position now? Does the judiciary get funded from the Consolidated Revenue Fund in such a way that just as states, the state receives its own, for instance, the federal government gets its own, how does the local government get its own? The thinking is that local governments across the country are still tied to the apron strings of the state. Is it a tier of government that is 100% recognized by the Constitution? Some states still have commissioner for local government and chieftaincy affairs. The existence of that ministry alone puts a question mark on the independence, the autonomy of local governments as a tier of government. So there has been a carryover of problems. So granting autonomy is not by pronouncement. It's not even by legislation, so-called. Legislation that is not holistic, that does not put money in the hands of those who should enjoy this autonomy, is a faulty legislation. That's where we are. What we have had is that there is more talk than action. It's haphazard. As for the judiciary, nobody will question the fight to have total autonomy for the judiciary. In fact, a lot of the blames that people have heaped on the judiciary, for me, is a result of this lack of autonomy. If the judges are still being paid by the executive, then there's a problem. If the internal controls over money that comes to the judiciary is still being overseen and managed by the executive, then there's a problem. That's not autonomy. So for those who are crying for autonomy for the judiciary, let us go back to those payments we make in courts to file a matter, to do an affidavit, all of those things that people don't think matter. When you put all of that money together, it will shock you how much it is. Who controls that amount?
The executive.
The executive. So don't just talk about autonomy for the judiciary if you are not willing to free their money for them. If you want to build a court, let's say we want to renovate magistrate courts, for instance, or high courts, for instance, the judiciary falls back on the executive
to get the funding.
To get the funding. So where's the autonomy? Until we see the judiciary as an autonomous arm of government that controls first its appointments, discipline and welfare of its officers, and then control of its resources from beginning to the end. Every other talk about autonomy is wishful thinking and it's haphazard.
And so for the legislature, it's also wishful thinking, Chris, particularly state legislators.
No, it's not wishful thinking. The problem is not, for me, the attempts to legislate. We know a legislative body, those State House of Assembly, that denied themselves autonomy themselves. So are the people ready for the autonomy? If a house will vote against itself that they don't want autonomy, it tells you that that is not the beginning of the problem. Why would the house vote against itself that it doesn't want autonomy? It is because there are overbearing influences on that house or in such or over such houses why they don't have the courage to ask for autonomy. So if we are going to have democracy, the legislature must be totally autonomous. The judiciary must be totally autonomous. Although in the practice of democracy anywhere in the world, you can't have what you may refer to as that total autonomy. But autonomous to the extent to which funding comes straight, first line charge, to the various organs of government. But the problem we have in Nigeria, why you see problems becoming intractable, is that people will give you mountains of evidence of the corruption in NJC, for instance. In fact, a particular figure was named there, and I don't want to name him here. They gave his profile, and now he is occupying such a sensitive position in NJC. Somebody who had been taken to court, for instance, for corruption cases. He was said to have embezzled 2 billion in the Supreme Court. So when people are able to cite such corruption, you don't have the followership of the masses to insist that such people should be given autonomy. Because the government, they've been giving local governments, for instance. I am not going to vote for local government autonomy in Nigeria as it is today. Because I know the fiefdom that local governments have become in Nigeria. They cry that they don't get money. But the little ones that they get, what have they done with it as an argument?
Well, the same goes for the states, the state executive.
So let's start dealing with the issues.
Okay.
Now, if it goes for the state executive and you say because the state does it,
yes,
you are also doing it, then you have no right to be arguing that you deserve autonomy. The state should also be asking.
So you don't have any right to give them autonomy if you're doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Yes. So
if there's so much fiefdom, like you said, at the local government, the same goes for the state, the same goes for the federal. So why are you not denying me my right?
No, the state should be asking for restructuring.
Okay.
That the reason why they are like that is because the federal government, which is a behemoth, takes 50-something% of our allocation, even when the money is produced in the Niger Delta. Okay. So the state should ask for autonomy so that they can control their resources. And then local government as a tier of government, as Comrade said, is very nebulous in the Constitution. In fact, all over the world's democracy, they are administrative units. As a tier of government, that's where the problem is. It's not a tier of government. There should be administrative units within the state. Federalism recognizes 2 tiers of government, which is the national and the sub-regional, which is the states. Okay. So there should be administrative units under the governor. That's my position on local government.
Right, let me push it there. I'd like to come to you now, Comrade, particularly on the legislature and its impact on governors. I mean, based on what we've been talking about. Every now and then you hear things like part of the reason why the legislature has not been able to live up to expectation is because in the military era, one of the arms of government that suffered the most is the abrogation of the legislature. To what extent do you think that if the legislature had had perhaps equal numbers of years of existence like the other arms of government, it would have done better? I'm asking this question because from the analysis we've done so far of the impact that has been made in terms of amendments, none seems to be seeing the light of the day. Meanwhile, these guys are collecting taxpayers' money. Is it that they just go there to sit at the expense of taxpayers' money without having meaningful impact on the polity? And then it brings me also to another very interesting part of this conversation, which is that to what extent does numbers of years spent by a legislator or a legislator help him or her to make more impact in terms of the business of legislation, so to speak? Yes.
Permit me to lay foundation. There are 3 arms of government, traditionally. There is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The legislature has the constitutional responsibility to make laws for the state. The executive implements those laws. The judiciary interprets the laws and apportions blame to wrongdoers. However, across the world, globally, the legislature is seen as the most influential of all of these three. And it is for good reason. First, the legislature provides oversight functions outside the main responsibility to make laws. Now, over time, in Nigeria specifically, because of increasing poverty, those who sent representatives to parliament now began to look beyond just lawmaking and oversight functions. They began to ask for direct projects for the communities which these legislators are representing. And I said, because of pervasive poverty. And again, because of the level of development. So they say, oh, this man is a very good lawmaker. And permit me, I'm a Benin man. I live in Oredo, and I am in the Edo South Senatorial District. So my concern are with those that I have contributed my votes to send in there. People are saying, you make laws. I have had cause to say, oh, the man representing Edo South, for instance, Senator Urogide, I've had cause to say, oh, this man has done very well. Because as chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, we see the oversight to engender some level of accountability in public agencies. But that's not enough. It may have done well in providing oversight functions, it's making quality laws. We are now saying the 7 local governments of Edo South Senatorial District, what has it brought by way of projects? And the man says, look, go to all the 7 local governments. Is it school buildings? Is it health centers? Is it boreholes? Is it electrification? I've done all of this. In Oredo, where I'm represented by Right Honorable Badeyama, it is easy to go around and see what the man has done in Oredo, which is not traditionally part of why we sent him there. But the reality is that we're asking them to come and do this. So the man can go to New Benin and say, for this market, I have put a borehole. For these streets, I have put solar lights. So the people now know that they are feeling the impact of governance through this legislature. This is where the downturn is. The legislature is different from the executive to the extent that the law, the constitution, the ground norm provides for only 2 terms of office for those in the executive. For the legislature, there is no cap, there is no limitation. As a matter of fact, by the very nature of legislation, the more a legislator stays in parliament, the more experience he garners, the more adroit, the more sagacious, the more effective and competent he is, first in the act of lawmaking and oversight, but more importantly, by the workings of the legislature, the 2 chambers. The more you stay, the better positioned you are to attract things to your constituencies. That's why they talk about ranking members. Let me give you a practical example. Again, with where I vote. Because having voted for these people, I have a duty to hold them to account. So I monitor the man who represented me who represents me in the House of Reps, and I monitor the one who represents me in the Senate. And so what's the position? The man for House of Reps has done 2 terms. He's just managed to be a chairman of one committee or the other, and he has done well, in my opinion. However, if he goes now again, he stands the chance of becoming either a deputy speaker of the House of Reps or even a speaker, or at the very least, a House leader. And somebody comes to tell me that I should not support this Right Honorable Badeyama, for instance, to go back and become a higher cadre of legislature. I will support him because he will attract more constituency projects.
Is there no greediness on the part of such intention.
Okay.
Is that greed? I'm asking a question.
Yes, I understand.
Is it that greed?
I have that question also asked.
Yes.
And this is my answer. For those who want the peasant morality of turn by turn in God, let them go to the executive. It's not the legislature. Nigeria is not alone on this. The best democracies in the world, and I can give you names. Look at the present Speaker of the U.S. Congress, Pelosi. She's synonymous with that office. She's been in the Congress for over 3 scores, over 2 scores. The late McCain, and there are several other names in Nigeria, so that we come back home. David Mark, because of the tribal configuration in Benue, he couldn't become governor. However, when you go to his senatorial district, he is worshipped. The reason is because he moved from just member and eventually became Senate president. Let me point you at Delta here. Ovi Omoagege is deputy Senate president, even though he wants to go for governorship now. In terms of projects, that man can actually contest with the governor on an exercise of show me your projects. As deputy Senate president, he has access to all the ministers, for instance. So by a phone call, he can attract something to his constituency. By share of constituency projects, as a far-ranking member of deputy Senate president, he has access to billions, either directly allocated to him in his constituency or using the various federal government agencies. That's what I am asking for Edo South. I don't know about others.
Okay,
I am saying for my senatorial district.
Let's not make it like
I have the opportunity, sir.
Yeah, just so we don't make it look like it's a campaign for those who have this intention. But
when you talk about being greedy, that's the point I'm addressing.
Let me ask you this question.
Yes.
Or, ask you to respond to this question. It's very easy for people to make this analysis, make reference to civilized democracy like the America, where you have someone like Nancy Pelosi, who is her birthright to be in the U.S. Congress.
And several others.
In fact, I did a study recently, just trying to do some research on it. I find people who've been in the legislature for up to 50 years, some 40 years and all of that. Back in the country, we have even the current Senate president, he's been there for as long as we can remember. But when we have this conversation, I'm concerned that we don't always, it's as though we forget to factor in what obtains in terms of remuneration in civilized climes, and what obtains in terms of remuneration in our nascent democracy. In civilized climate, you're on allowance and stuff like that. In this part of the world, you're on allowances that are humongous. In fact, the records to show that is about the highest in the world. So someone is there for the first term, second term, like that. As the number of terms increases, the amount of wealth at his disposal also increases. Isn't that a big concern? Because we're talking about the plight of the ordinary man on the street. And you said that the reason why people go on this trajectory of turn by turn is because of the level of poverty. So if somebody goes there and is of another person comes, he gets a chunk of the national cake. Isn't that a challenge? That
I like to. There are 2 arguments, and we need to take them one after the other. The first one is the argument of the humongous resources available to whether it's a senator or a member of the House of Reps. That's another issue. And that issue is already been addressed by Nigerians. I am sure you know there is no Nigerian, no member of any constituency who has not cried out that there should be a deliberate reassessment of the manner in which the patrimony at that level is disbursed. And I have often said that the take home for senators and members of House of Reps, even up to Houses of Assembly, must now be made a public matter. There is so much mystery surrounding it. So you find that there are claims and counterclaims of how much it is. It is time to put it in the public for discussion. And the purpose will be that these persons should be made to understand that they are also Nigerians. Where we feel that they are unduly being favored, we slash them. There are agencies to do that. Unfortunately, That has not worked for two reasons. One, enough pressure has not been piled. Two, the very people who are to do this are themselves beneficiaries of this system. But that's just one argument. I have argued, for instance, that why can't we have part-time legislators? Why not? We can have part-time legislators, so we pay for sitting allowances and every other allowance we feel are germane for the job that they do. That's one argument. The other argument is this, that the danger in thinking that because there is so much money available to them, we must now do a roll call, is to legitimize the very thing that we are going against. In which case, we accept that there is so much money available to a senator and the House of Reps. Because of that, you just go collect your own, leave there, let another person go collect his own. What it does, number one, is legitimizes the same thing we are fighting against. And number two, is that it rubs off the advantage of having persons who have grown in stature, in experience, to be able to make laws. Make no mistake about it. We were discussing just now the lapses in constitutional amendment and all. One major factor that has come to the fore in that discussion is the quality of representation in parliament. We have situations in parliament where people are representing constituencies, and for a whole tenure, they don't sponsor a bill, they don't sponsor a motion, they don't even stand to contribute. I'm sure some constituencies are wondering whether their representatives have suddenly disappeared from parliament. For me, as far as legislature is concerned, the only ground on which we should remove a legislator and bring another person in is we have clear evidence of incapacity. Clear evidence that this fellow is just there. He doesn't know why he was sent to that place. But if you have legislators who are proven over time, first by the impact that they have made on their community through constituency projects, and the quality of bills and motions that they have sponsored, then we should encourage them to go higher so that they get to a point where they are positioned to attract even much more to their constituencies. All right.
Thank you very much. Chris, I've let you in the cooler a little bit because I wanted to engage.
No, I'm happy you did.
All right, but let's get you into this conversation, particularly as it relates to the seeming challenges that the legislature has suffered, particularly during the military interregnum. We see that also affecting what is coming out, to the point that there are feelings that the legislature, in most cases, is always like a rubber stamp to the executive. I mean, you can't compare, for example, the Senate under the leadership of Senator Bukola Saraki to the Senate under the leadership of Senator Ahmed Lawan. Ditto for the House of Representatives. And then it's even worse off when you come to the state houses of assembly. Let's look at that. Yes. Under that circumstance, does the issue of tenure, does it factor into such a conversation?
Yes. That's why I say I'm happy you engaged in, because I'm happy he has elevated the discussion to the levels where we are looking at it as matters of issues. I can only answer your questions by evidence and by providing empirical arguments. Now, motion is not results. In journalism, I know they used to tell us effort is good, but results are better. The most germane result for electoral, democratic electoral practice in Nigeria that we have clamored for years is this electoral amendment act that have been passed, where we have the most far-reaching reforms to our electoral process than we have had in the beginning. It didn't happen under the confrontational regime of Bukola Saraki. You see, what people call rubber stamp, or what people call dynamism, confrontation is not dynamism, because what we want to achieve is results. I want to hear that a particular Senate president during his tenure, when Ahmed Lawan said Nigerians will remember us, that is the 10th Assembly when they leave, I was one of those that scoffed at him. But I was surprised at the adroit way in which Lawal's Senate was able to get those far-reaching electoral amendments passed When they were attending meeting with the president, I criticized this here on television. But by the time the president came out, we have only one clause in contention now, which is the clause 84.
Yeah.
All the ones about, funding for INEC, and all of that have been passed. That is achievement. So confrontation does not mean that you are achieving results. And what led to confrontation? It is inexperience. Coming from governor, the executive, and the chairman governorship forum, Saraki already sees himself as an authority and as an institution, and he thought he should impose that institution and then he became at loggerhead with the president. But Lawal, which you mentioned about his donkey years in the Senate, understands, because of his experience and return, that you handle legislative business with a lot of diplomacy and what you call lobbying. And they were able to get the president to sign that electoral reform. I congratulate them. Now, Lawal is there. What is the Bayami Lila is doing his 7th tenure. So we begin to look at it again, that we need to have an institution, the legislative institution. And a thing becomes institution over time of training, practice, and rituals. And you cannot have people who don't understand that keep going to the legislature, whether the House of Rep or the Senate, just because we have to have somebody new to go and fetch his own ton of money after 8 years. It doesn't make sense. I am unapologetic about, I live in Edo South, about Urohide's quest to return.
Okay, let's talk about him. Let's not speak about him.
About the legislative institutionalization. Yeah. That's how I call it.
Okay.
Legislative institution. That's why we are naming people from far off country who have shown that they understand what Congress is all about and the place of Congress in democracy. And they are able to speak out. I remember the face-off between John McCain and Donald Trump. In fact, after John McCain's pronouncement, the pressure increased on Donald Trump. And Donald Trump today eventually was done by America. Because having been in the institution for donkey of years, representing the people, he understood the thinking of the American people and the spirit of the American democracy. And he was able to put that in very clear terms. So the point is this, that we have to allow for experience. And in any case, we all know that people learn by experience. I've just given you an example of what was achieved. And we have had a relatively peaceful democracy, so to speak, in this regime, because of the fact that those are the helm of affairs are people that have experience. Now, what do you call it, constitutional projects, it is a very clear, argument that the comrade has put forth. If a man has the advantage of having more influence and reach to attract, development to your area, create employment for the youth, shouldn't that man be the person that should be allowed to go? Is the system, as he said, I agree that the arguments are true. The argument about the remuneration of our legislative officers and all of that in Nigeria, in fact, including the executive, our political office holder, including the executive, it's an argument that has been there forever. I will continue to argue it until Nigeria will take that decision to say, let's bring down or let's amend or whatever we do to ensure that government is not too costly for us in Nigeria.
All right, why do we mistake or mix up executive tenure for legislative tenure and legislative tenure for executive tenure? Anytime you talk about this, people make reference to former President Olusegun Obasanjo's attempt. Yes. Why is this so? Is this financial?
There are two reasons. Number one is pure ignorance. There are still a lot of people out there who believe that the same set of rules on tenure guide both the executive and the legislature. Our duty as those in the public space is to cure people of that ignorance. For legislature, there is nothing like tenure limitation. We have it constitutionally spelled out in the executive. That's one. The second is pure mischief. Because of the hula baloo that accompanied the attempted third term of General Obasanjo, people believe that the only way to bring down those legislators who seek to return for whatever term is to tag them with the third term thing because it's popular. But it's neither here nor there. But let me say what is more germane. For me, it's not about political parties when it comes to legislature. For executive, yes. But when it comes to legislature, it's not about political party. I am not concerned about whether it's PDP or APC. Any constituency that has an opportunity to advance their representatives for a ranking position in the House, whichever party that person is, I will support. Because that is the only way my constituency can be assured of greater impact in terms of projects. Like I told you, it's no longer enough to say that the man is very brilliant on the floor of the House. They say when he's talking, there will be smoke. That's not it anymore. It is your ability to bring projects, because there is poverty in the land, especially in rural communities. And for me, the two of us, these are the areas that concern me. And all those communities, whoever it is that has the opportunity to go and influence projects in huge numbers, those who are talking, I'm sure they will testify, even in their own constituencies, that there's a difference. They can see the difference between somebody who has just gotten in there and a person who has done some state.
But even those who have just gotten in there, they have evidence of some of these projects.
No, you will have evidence. The fact that you have gotten there doesn't mean that you didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I can name several people. We have stopped naming names now.
Yes.
Otherwise, I will keep giving you names of those who are in their first tenure, who are affecting their community so much.
Okay.
So what that simply means is that they will have opportunity to influence more if they move further. And like I said, it's not about parties.
Okay.
What I do not want is people drawing a blanket over everybody, because it affects me, it affects my brothers and sisters in Edo South. Don't draw a blanket.
Okay.
For us, if we have an opportunity like we have now to attract more projects, to do the kind of things that Oviomo Agege has done in the senatorial district in Delta, we will do everything humanly possible to make that happen.
All right, just before we call it a wrap on the show, on this segment of the program, where we're reviewing the impact of legislature as we build and move towards the 2023 election. It's always this way. The penultimate year before an election, political parties become more rancorous.
Yes.
The issue of delegates and stuff like that, presidential aspirants, governorship aspirants, senatorial aspirants, House of Rep aspirant, name it. There's this rancor. And in Edo State, in fact, the ruling party has not been free from such rancor. We've heard people say we now have, for example, the new PDP versus the old PDP. But when you interfere with some of the big guns, they tell you there's no such thing as the new PDP or PDP is PDP. So let me start with you on this.
Yes.
Quickly.
Now, there will be rancor as long as people don't play by the rules. I remember when they had problems in APC between the current governor and Adams Oshomole. The most inspiring interview I listened to was that of Alton Ojezwa. Ojezwa spelled out the rule and said, all I am saying is that we should just play by the rule. There's a constitution. The party is guided by a constitution.
Okay.
What does your constitution say? It's as simple as that. If your constitution says this, that's what you'd follow. So it is when people have vested interests and they want to push that interest, and so they couch those interests in other names that are appealing to the people, and then they begin to come out to say, I mean, if I'm a card-carrying member of PDP, I am PDP. Why should you tag me new PDP or old PDP? Old in age or old in what? I am PDP. If I'm a card-carrying member of PDP, it doesn't matter whether I joined today or whether I joined yesterday. And the fact that I joined today, now, for instance, I want to tell you that the governor of this state is PDP. He was APC. We all know when he joined PDP. But you had PDP forever before him, and PDP didn't win the governorship election. Nobody said he was new PDP then and he was not going to win the election.
But he didn't win the election alone. He won the election based on the support of the people he met in the party.
He won the election based on the support of Edo people.
Okay.
How many people are PDP in the states?
Okay.
The numbers with which he won the election, is that PDP number in the state? That's the PDP, the number.
So what's the point you are driving?
The point I am driving at is that those who are putting that dichotomy, that there's new PDP and old PDP, are doing it for political reasons. They want to do it because they don't want to face the truth that your constitution has said that the governor is the leader of the party. And it is PDP that has it in its constitution.
Okay.
It is written inside the constitution. The governor is the leader of the party.
Okay.
So pure and simple.
All right, comrades. I heard about, is it a mock delegate or something? Yeah, or is it a pseudo delegate?
Yeah. Look, because I'm not a politician, I'm very political, very, very political, but I'm not a politician. However, if you recall, when there was conflict in the APC then, 2019 leading to 2020, it was here. I was one of the first Edo people to come here to say, it appears that the APC cannot manage its affairs, and that Edo people should look towards PDP. I said unapologetically, I am here again to tell you, PDP had better put its house in order. All of this rancor is about what? What is it about? You have been given control of government in Edo State. In advancement of the social contract between the PDP and the Edo people, the party has a responsibility to deliver on the promises made by their henchman, that is the governor. All these distractions, Edo people are watching. PDP had better get it right. The winner takes it all. Oh, we are here, therefore we have everything. It's wrong. Oh, we have come, therefore we have everything. It's wrong on both parts. It is all of them closing ranks and working together to give governance dividends to Edo people. That's Edo people's concern. Oh. If PDP does not get it right, we want to remind them that less than 4 years ago, APC was in charge. No condition is permanent. What is permanent is the demand, the desire, the aspiration of Edo people to have governance dividends delivered to them by those that they have elected to run their affairs. The party is a vehicle for the government to deliver. If the party now becomes a stumbling block in that effort to deliver, then it should give way for others. And the beauty of it is that in this country, there are very many
how do you
political
explain
parties.
this? One godfather is out, another is coming in. I don't get it. That
They
seems
will,
to be.
they, look, they will.
Yes, I mean one is out, another
Yes,
is coming in.
You know,
I don't get it.
the thing about godfathers
Yes.
is that there will always be godfathers. Because you have people whose only ambition is to get to a point where they can determine what goes to everybody. It's there. We can't run away from it.
Okay.
However, we must recognize it for what it is. It is an evil. It's an evil because once you have a godfather, the implication for governance is that instead of decisions about projects, decisions about appointments, having square pegs in square holes, being done in a manner that suggests equity, that suggests the promotion of excellence and the entrenchment of participatory governance. What it becomes is that these things are done at the whims and caprices of an individual or a few individuals. And I think that people should learn, wherever cabals are, once the people recognize them, when the vehicle that they are using for their cabalization is identified, they will be swept away along with that vehicle.
Thank you very much, Comrade Austin Osakwe and Chris Ojekere. Thank you so much for coming on the program. It's the TMI Monday. We'll take a short break. We'll be back on the concluding side of the program. Please stay with us.